Good morning, everybody. I welcome you all to BW People's HR Voices segment. Today, we'll be discussing the compensation and benefit trends to look out for in the year 2023. I take this opportunity to welcome Mr. Narayanan Vijay Raghavan. He's the head HR Shared Services, Fidelity India. We welcome you on board, sir. Thank you so much for taking out time for us and speaking on this topic to us.
Thanks, Sugan. Glad to be around.
Thank you so much. Just to give a brief introduction of what exactly we're going to be focusing on. So, I feel that strategies for employee compensation and benefits need to be overhauled by companies today. This is because attracting and retaining talent has become a major challenge, especially in the post COVID-19 world and post that as well. So there is a significant shift towards the well-being of employees, and most companies are giving high priority to employee compensation and benefits in various forms. Multiple earning employee compensation and benefits trend, they're likely to gain more traction in 2023 according to recent surveys. Thus, companies need to redesign their employee well-being plans by taking trends into account. And here we are discussing few trends on compensation and benefits with Mr. Narayan today. So my first question to you. Approximately 42% of the companies in India have projected a positive business revenue outlook. Has this been the case for Fidelity too? And how have the compensatory measures taken by Fidelity affected business growth in 22? Do you expect the same to continue in 23 as well?
See, let's talk about 22 now. Fidelity continues to be, a significant part of Fidelity's global plans. So in India, we support our parent by providing services across a wide variety of, you know, tech and operations areas. And we believe that the trend of accelerating value addition, has been on a big swing in 2022. Now, nobody knows what the future is, but, it certainly has been an impactful year. 2022 has been a pretty impactful year, both in terms of the contribution that Fidelity in India has been able to make to the Fidelity Global organization, as well as in terms of how we've been able to grow our value add and our employer value proposition within India itself.
Sir, do you see certain amount of trends jumping into 23 as well as they were in 22?
Forecasting is always a tough challenge, especially for somebody for those of us who saw 2022 the first half and how things have changed in 2022 second half with the economic uncertainty, the tech layouts. It's always a challenging area. So we would we don't have a formal outlook out for 2023 to say that okay, we expect the trends to continue, a lot. But what I would say is that most organizations will just need to keep and keep their ears very close to the ground and be ready to pivot and to be able to play out the market, to really play out what the market sentiments are, and then be in a position to actually encash on them.
So layoffs have been in a overhaul all through 2022 and most in the last segment of this year. What do you think in terms of the compensation that will be offered to freshers next year or to, of course, the professionals next year? Will there be a significant change in the kind of compensation that will be according to industry standards? Do you think the industry standard compensation of certain sections will vary?
See, the what I have observed in the India market, over a long period is that there's no one thing, no one single element around a particular talent segment. Compensation has always been, differing for different talent segments. So it could be new and digital skills, for example, all through 21 and earlier of 22. You saw a lot of demand for digital talent, which drove compensation for these talent segments differently as compared to other segments. So you could, if you graduated out as, let's say, as an engineer, but who did not possess digital skills and did not want to work in those areas, then your market was very different as compared to somebody who may have come from a very different background but had digital skills. So I would expect that similar trends may continue, where you have different skills being priced differently, driven by the demand for such skills, the supply of such skills. So you're going to see some different, some element of skill-based differentiation that's at play in the market. They will continue. Whether it is the same skills that get paid, where the demand is the same in 23 as it is in 22, that we do not know. That could change depending on what people are looking for, the kind of business environment we are in. But yeah, broad-based differentiation on account of skills has always been a feature of the India market, and I would expect that that's going to continue.
So, talent retention has been a problem throughout 2022 and in previous years as well. Do you think measures like ESOPs and restricted stock units that companies are offering to people in the IT industry is actually the only way to retain talent, or is it a trend that's going to continue in terms of, not giving a hefty and a handsome amount of salary to newbies, but, shelling out ESOPs or RSUs to them?
See, the companies use these instruments differently basis the profile of the companies, and what is it that they're looking for, looking out of people. So if you're a if you're a company that's starting out, or if you're a company that has major expansion plans and wants to, and you want to keep your, let's say, management team or your professional team tight, RSUs would be a wonderful way, especially if you're able to tie it into hitting company milestones, growth milestones, product milestones, whatever they be. The way companies use compensation instruments is going to be very specific to companies depending on what their requirements are, how is it that they are able to tie this
Mhm.
into the value proposition for their teams. Now, is this I don't and given different legal requirements, accounting requirements, I don't think it's as simple as, hey, let's not pay cash, let's pay ESOPs, etc. But I think it's going to be more about using different compensation instruments tailored to what the requirement of companies are that will drive this.
So is it like the compensation instruments are now being used and highlighted more in terms of just retaining talent?
Yes, I think companies have gotten very, very specific about how they can tie in compensation into some element of their strategic business outlook. How do I tie that to driving value for me? So be it in terms of, like you said, retaining specific skill groups or specific individuals, or about presenting a picture out for the future to to broad base it. If you have a broad based ESOP scheme which covers everybody in the company, and you're using that as a message to talk about growth prospects of the company, companies use it in that way. If you are if you want your top management team or a team of professionals, like I said earlier, and you want to tie them in till the company hits a particular milestone, that's another way companies use it. So I think companies have gotten very are employing compensation instruments more strategically. Compensation always has been strategic in terms of as a lever to attract and retain people. But now I think trying to define what instrument best fits the requirement of my need, companies have gotten very, very clever and strategic about this.
While it is a good way to achieve companies' milestones, sir, but then if an individual or a professional wants to switch, so of course they cannot showcase ESOPs or RSUs within their CTC. So do you think that the compensation industry will vary in times to come when more and more companies are opting for ESOPs and RSUs? Because in that case, we're not able to showcase what is the exact take home that we are getting. It might be above the CTC also, but CTC will only include a limited and restricted amount, which is mentioned in the appointment letters as well, which is ESOPs are not mentioned there.
I think that's taking a restrictive view, both as an individual and as an organization. I think it's taking a very restrictive view of compensation. The the entire bit around, as an individual, if I'm not valuing the ESOPs that I'm getting, then there's something wrong about the entire compensation structuring element or my deal with my organization to begin with. The in terms of, there are things that companies can do. There are many legal requirements around how you can display compensation, and whether it's part of CTC, out on top of CTC, can vary. But if you're in a company that's doing well, you're seeing, let's say, even if you're a startup that's not listed, but is seeing
Mhm.
increase, let's say, is receiving multiple, let's say, every every round of funding, the company valuation is increasing. As an individual, there's no way on earth I'm going to say that, hey, my ESOPs are not valuable. I'm only going to put a notional value. Now, how I convey this to to the into all of the stakeholders, including a potential new employer, I think is best left to me as an individual to figure out how best I value them, what can I give up, or what do I want to give up in respect of, let's say, a potential new opportunity. Those factors get very individual, but the to talk about the ability to showcase value, I think is maybe not the right way to look at it. And there are several models. If you look at models like Black-Scholes valuations, there are many models to value stocks, even if they are unlisted, even if they are, let's say, at a at a pre-seed round. There are multiple ways to look at it, and they are elements that that individuals potentially use, or companies typically use to from a valuing compensation and conveying what the value really is.
All right. So, according to, let's say, from an industry standpoint, what would be your take on the talent movements, increasing in 2023?
See, if if I'm interpreting this to mean more, are we going to see the kind of mobility of people moving across companies? If that's the intent, then I think that's largely driven by that's going to be driven by what the demand supply situation really looks like. A lot of companies have expanded their footprint in 2022. A lot of them, NASCOM, for example, talks of 500 more GICs coming up over the next 3 years. Many companies trying to expand the footprint of their operations in the country. Now, all of that portends to some degree of demand and supply that's going to exist in the market. And to that extent, you would believe that okay, there's always going to be some degree of movement that come 2023 as well. It's not while we have the crypto winter, we have tech layoffs. It's not that
Mhm.
companies have stopped hiring. Maybe it's gone it's gone back to pre-pandemic levels. It has not been the elevated levels that we've seen in 21 or 22. If you look at the current situation, so the current talent mobility, I think, is more around companies settling down, and it's going to be a function of the expansion elements that companies will look at, or new companies coming in India that will drive it. Do we expect this to happen? NASCOM predicts 500 companies coming in, and to that extent, I would believe that some talent movement will be seen.
So, according to NASDAQ, the salary budget planning report found that companies in India are budgeting an overall median increase of 10% in 2023, translating to an average salary increase of 9.8%. Compared to what actually was 9.5%, that's an increase, in 2022. What's your take on this?
See, I haven't seen the Nasdaq numbers or the reports that you're referencing to be, to comment on them. But
Mhm.
the numbers that you talked about, talked about of 22, I think they're pretty much on board there. That's pretty much on the dot from how 22 increases have looked like.
Okay, I mean, do you think that it is a result of the actions that have taken place in 22 or, I mean, 21 or 22 in the compensation and benefits industry that we see an increase in the present ending year? I mean, have there been any different sort of mechanisms or different models in the compensation and benefits industry that has actually given this result? Of course, you said that report is not in front of you and probably you cannot comment on the numbers, but then my question clearly says that there has been a significant increase in by the end of 2022. So, has there been any strategic decision that's taken place within the industry, which can actually result or claim that X amount of increase has been happened because of this trend that was carried on?
Speaking generically, all I would say is that you know what what forecasters can talk of are projections, and
Mhm.
and the timing of these projections vary significantly. For example, if you ask somebody in the first half of 2022 what salary increases companies were planning for, that number is going to look very different in the second half of 22, now that you're looking at a very, very uncertain economic environment globally.
Mhm.
With crypto winters and tech layoffs, the number today is going to be very different than what it was in early 2022. To that extent, I would, all I would say is that the the numbers that forecasters have projected were at a point in time. How true these numbers are at this point of time when things have changed significantly, is always each company is just going to decide on the basis of how it sees its talent market, and then decide and then look at multiple factors that drive increases, right from the need to remain competitive, or the and how does the company see its affordability from a compensation perspective that will drive these numbers.
Considering this has been a comeback year to office for most of the employees, how do you see a new version of compensation and benefit trends in 23? Any inclusions, deletions, or revisions that is being projected within the existing, trademark rules of compensation and benefits industry that you think, might
Yeah, I
just
think
propel?
at the beginning, Sugandhi talked about the focus on well-being, and I
Right.
think that's something that a lot of companies will focus on
Okay.
as you get very aggressive on return to office. A lot of companies have started focusing, on how do you make the experience at the office
Right.
interesting enough for associates. You
Exactly.
know what the last 2 years have taught us has been that more or less in many industries work can be done in a distributed way. So what is the need to need for somebody to come back to work? I think companies will are focusing on that to figure out what is the why do I need to how many people at work? What is the value add that it brings? How do I establish the value add so that employees who come in can experience the office and feel that value add? I think that focus is going to be high across across organizations. It's also going to be high on and to that extent, a lot of employers have taken a very conscious swing towards well-being over the last
Mhm.
couple of years, and the well-being element I think will only get more and more enhanced,
So
and
does that
the
only
element.
mean does that also mean that there'll be a conclusion that in within this industry there'll be more focus of employers on how to actually give a sound environment to employees who are coming back to work, which means there'll be more sort of work towards in the office design setup as well?
I think many companies are experimenting with with different models. The entire element around, okay, for example, something that that we've heard a lot of companies talk about has been
Mm-hmm.
have been collaboration, have been okay. We need teams to collaborate. We need people to collaborate. We need teams talking, so that's what drives innovation. That's where new ideas emerge. Now, your existing office setups may or may not have accommodated that, but the fact that there's been a break for a couple of years and people are coming back to work has given companies the ability to rethink office spaces, has been given them the ability to rethink the value proposition as people come into work, and that would include collaboration, you know amenities at the workplace, making sure that people are interacting with each other. That drives up both value for them as well as for the organization. I think all of these are elements that companies are looking at as they decide what the design of their offices look like, what how does benefits really look like into the new year.
Well, as an employee myself, so the last question that every employee is very eager on knowing your last word of advice and top five trends that you can actually list down for us, for people like us who are actually employees and looking out to employers as to what it is that's in kitty for employees for the year 2023.
I don't know about trends, but I'll talk about a few things that I think companies have adopted, which are, which I think will help. One, I think it is it's extraordinarily important to be close to employees and know what their requirements are and why you're doing certain things. I think it's no longer about big programmatic approaches as much as trying to make things work for every employee. So if it means keeping your eyes close to the ground, companies need to do that. And by the ground here, I mean the voice of the associates. The second thing I would say is companies also need to be ready to pivot at the earliest signals. For example, 2022 showed us that it didn't take a lot to move from a very gung-ho environment to an environment of total economic uncertainty.
Right.
So the ability to pivot and keep yourself flexible, I think, is required across employers. Third thing I would say is that one trend that we've seen increasingly gain momentum is about personalization. How do I make the organization come real to my employee? If I offer programs that are large scale but employees don't find value, there's hardly any benefit that I'm translating to my associates. So how do I make this real from an employer perspective, from an employee perspective, I think that will be a focus for a lot of organizations. But if you get some of these elements right, then I think you're likely to end up in a point of success rather than not.
Thank you so much for giving out time to us. And I'm sure people out there hearing, employees out there hearing, would have got an X amount of, new information that they can add to the kitty, and probably they'll have a clear outlook of what they can, project in the year 2023 in the compensation and benefits industry. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us.
Thanks, Sugan. Thanks for the time.